What is up, everybody? It's your boy Duty back again with another video. And that's right, folks. It's your favorite segment, my favorite segment, everyone's favorite segment, where we take a look at the weekly financial data for DSP Gaming, DSP Reacts, DSP Throwbacks, and potentially DSP Politics. Now, why is Duty talking about DSP Politics? Well, we all know that our boy Phil has been hinting for several weeks about creating a channel called DSP Politics. And we all know why. The financial outlook for our boy Phil doesn't look good for 2024. And he's throwing everything up against the wall to try to figure out how he can extract the money from the dense wallets. That's right. And nothing's been working. Not even Cat being on stream, not co-op with Cat, not even the chill, pay my bills Phil segment that happened the other day. Nothing is working. So, we may see DSP Politics sooner rather than later. So let's get into the weekly numbers, folks. As you guys know, we take a look at the weekly totals for the business. And of course, just like the previous week, Phil worked 6 days out of the week. And as we can see here by the numbers, he had a pretty rough week. It was worse than the previous week. And if it wasn't for Baldur's Gate 3, Phil would have been in a lot of hurt. As you can see here, as I notated, of the 6 days Phil streamed, he actually played Baldur's Gate 4 out of the 6 days. 4. So, if you take a look at those 4 streams, he does, he does 6 days. He does 12 streams. A third of his streams was Baldur's Gate 3. And that seems to be the only playthrough making Phil any money. The co-op with Cat is dead. We're not going to see Cat back on stream for a long time if we see her at all. And I don't think we'll probably see co-op. We may see her do another Q&A night when Phil gets desperate and needs some additional tip money. But if you look here, and we'll go through the numbers, the only days where he really made any significant money was when he played Baldur's Gate. And he's averaging about $100 per stream for Baldur's Gate. So for the work week that started on February the 16th through the 21st, Phil made $957 in tips, which is a decrease from the previous week. And you're wondering why was that the case? Well, Phil's been begging for super chats and memberships because the February YouTube check is going to be abysmal. And we all know that the YouTube check is what pays all the bills. The money he gets from the once a month check he gets from YouTube pays for everything. And the tip money is just his splurging money. It's for WWE Champion, Jin, DoorDash, and you have it. So I think he realized that super chats have dried up, which I've been saying for the longest. Memberships are not even in the cards. And the tip money he was receiving, he's such an addict that he can't help himself. Any money he receives on the daily, he's going to spend it on stuff that he doesn't need. WWE Champions and so on. So he's kind of forcing himself, even though he's getting less revenue from super chats and memberships, he's forcing himself to save. That's essentially what he's doing. Because that tip money, as soon as it goes into PayPal, Phil is pulling it right out. He doesn't wait. He doesn't leave it in there to accrue. He's just spending it on nonsense. So this way, he forces himself to not touch that money. And that's the only reason why he's asking for super chats. Because YouTube gets a 30% cut of that versus PayPal, where it's probably maybe, 2% that PayPal takes out of each tip. If that, I don't even think it's that. It's probably less than that. So let's take a look here at the super chats. So for super chats, even that was trash. The super chat for the work week, he made $208, which was a decrease from last week where he earned $334. So he had a bump last week in super chats, but that didn't last long. So if we look at the totals for the work week, super chats and tips, and again, folks, these are gross numbers. I'm not removing the 30% cut from YouTube, taxes, or any of that. These are just gross numbers. Phil managed to pull in $1,165, which was a decrease of over $230 for the week. Now, don't forget, Phil made it a point this week to beg. I mean, extra beg. and he requested super chat money. Well, he requested everything. He requested tips, super chats, and memberships, and it just didn't pan out whatsoever. Even playing Baldur's Gate 4, could you imagine what these numbers were if he decided to say only play Baldur's Gate twice versus 4 times? It would be a bloodbath for this guy. So, the work week is going to be rough for Phil. And he did get his YouTube check yesterday, which was the January check. And we're going to hear about that tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a segment, and it's going to kick off the next week of begging, the next work week of begging. Phil is going to go out of his way to continually hammer the point that the detractors, the Argentinian detractors, have hurt his business to the point that he's not going to be able to pay his bills. And he'll throw everything out. He'll throw out the 2 big bills, taxes. What else? The quarterly bills. You know, because Phil's the only man on planet Earth that has quarterly bills. And he's gonna hammer that point starting Friday. Mark my words. Mark my words. There's gonna be several beg segments. Yeah. So let's look at the grand total for February. Now, February, everyone knows, is a short month. Next week is the last week for February, and Phil managed to pull in $3,807 so far for February. So he's going to be falling short for February on the tips and super chat side. Now, we know that the memberships have just died. He's not getting any real memberships other than the 300 or so dents who actually are willing to pay out of their pocket monthly. So February is probably looking more bleak than January. In January, he did okay. He made $5,789. So, you know, he had a little cushion there to help him with help him in January. But that's not going to be the case here in February. Man, February and March is just going to be a beg-tastic time. And don't forget, Phil's birthday's coming up in April, so he'll be hyping that shit up in March, and expect him to put the whale call out there. He may tell his old former whales, hey, why don't you stop by just for one day? That'll be very meaningful. And while you're here, drop me some money. He's going to go that route, very similar to what he did for his 15-year Legacy Marathon back in September. Alrighty, folks, so let's just look at the yearly total so far for 2024. So for 2024, Phil has managed to make $7,583 in tips compared to $8,234 in 2023 for the same time period. It's not looking good for you, Phil. It's not looking good at all. Now, the significant thing here are the super chats. So for 2024 so far, Phil managed to make $2,013 in super chats for 2024. In 2023, he made $3,220 for the same time period. Man, that's hurting Phil right there. We're talking about $1,200 that he is not getting. So $600 per month is not being added to the YouTube check. On top of the memberships that he's not receiving. So don't let Phil fool you. The business is in trouble. So grand totals so far for 2024, Phil has managed to make $9,596. You believe that? In less than 2 months, Phil has managed to make almost 10 grand. 10 grand from like 5 to 10 people that actually donate to this fucking dent. But, you know, People love them some scat humor, and they love them some Phil, so they're going to throw those disability checks at Phil anytime they can. So for 2023, for that same time period, he's made $11,458, which is a net decrease of 17%. It's following the same pattern as last year. He's down 17 to 20%. And it's even worse because at the beginning of the year, he wasn't that off. He was probably off by about 10% in revenue for super chats and tips. We're in February, and he's almost down 20%. That just looks bad for you, Phil. Now, let's take a look at 2022, where he had a pretty decent year. 2022, he had a pretty decent year. So in 2024, Phil managed to make $9,596 in total so far. And then for that same time period in 2022, Phil managed to make $15,048. So That is a net decrease of 37%. 37%, Phil. We're talking about in less than 2 months, you've made what, $6,000 less? So you've made $3,000 less each month in January and February than you did in 2022. I don't give a shit who you are. That's going to hurt anyone. And the issue is you're not making that revenue up in anything. You don't have sponsorships. Your views are shit. You have 3 channels and you can barely crack 500,000 views. 3 channels, Phil, and you can barely crack 500,000 views. And Phil will sit there and tell you views don't matter. Bullshit. Bullshit. If you count on ad revenue, it matters. The less views you get, the less ad revenue you're going to get. And the other issue is, it also takes into account super thanks. If no one's watching your content, no one's dropping super thanks. If no one's watching your content, they may decide not to tip you when you're not streaming. So you see how that correlates, Phil? It correlates into lower views equals lower revenue. Now, Phil will sit and lie and tell you, oh, it doesn't matter. My revenue is the same. That's bullshit. I've been calling Phil out for that nonsense for months. The business is in the red, and it's not doing good. And for normal people, this wouldn't really be too much of an issue. But we're talking about Phil here. Phil doesn't have a money issue. Phil has a spending issue. He spends more than what he brings in. If he were simply to modify his spending behavior, he'd be fine. He'd be okay. I did the numbers. If he simply cut back his WWE champions, that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about Jen or DoorDash. If he cut back just his WWE champions by, let's say, half, 50% less than what he's spending now, he would be fine. We're talking about about $1,500 to $2,000 of extra money he would get every month if he just didn't blow it on fucking sweaty JPEGs. And he wouldn't have this issue. He wouldn't have to come on stream and beg. And we know Phil. Phil has said over and over, I hate begging. I hate begging. No, Phil. You love begging. That's the problem. Anyway, I don't know. I really don't know. And then he's talking about putting Baldur's Gate 3 on hiatus for Final Fantasy. Yeah, I don't see that lasting long. That might last a week. Because after the first week, no one's going to give a shit about Final Fantasy. The tips are going to dry up. And we're probably going to see Baldur's Gate 3 again for 4 days. 4 out of the 6 days. Phil should just break down and become a Baldur's Gate 3 streamer. Because that is the only thing bringing in cash for him. That's the only playthrough making him money. Tekken is dead. Like a Dragon is dead. Even his come chill, pay my bills, Phil stream made nothing. What, he made $80? $80 to sit there and give his undivided attention to the dents, and he managed to pull in $80. The cat co-op stream where she walked out and left like a fucking dent, that made $80. Pathetic. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Peace out.